Welcome. This is the March 17th meeting of the Seattle CLF Hub. My name is Justin Schwartzoff. I'm an embodied carbon lead researcher at Element Architects, and I'm your host for today's discussion on the embodied carbon and mechanical systems. Joining me in this presentation are four experts on this topic. First off, we have Drew Nitschke, Sustainable Strategist for Glumac. Drew manages green building certification for major corporations and building owners across a variety of project types, including mixed-use, residential, commercial, and institutional facilities. Today, he'll start us off with a look at the importance of considering MEP systems when conducting whole building LCA, and an overview of the MEP 2040 commitment. Following Drew, we have Ivan Jose, Senior Building Performance Analyst with McKinstry. Ivan has been with the industry for 8 years and has spent most of his career analyzing building system designs to minimize operational embodied carbon. His presentation today focuses on the tools and processes being developed for MEP LCAs. After Ivan, we have Rachel Rublik, mechanical engineer with PAE. Rachel is an active member of the CLF Oregon Hub, and she's joining us today to be sharing with us the challenges associated with conducting MEP LCAs, as well as some case studies addressing this work. Finally, we have David Mead, Senior Associate with PAE, leader of PAE's Regenerative Design Group, and a Drawdown Fellow of Project Drawdown. David will give us a look into what we see on the horizon for MEP LCA work. As always, we'll have time afterwards for a Q&A session with our panel, but please feel free to leave your questions and comments in the chat during the presentation. With that, I'll hand it off to Drew.
All right, great. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that. My name is Drew Nitschke. I work at Glumac. We are an MEP design firm, and we also do sustainability consulting as well. And we're kind of located all over the West Coast and have a pretty strong presence in Seattle. I'm a sustainability strategist, so I'm within the sustainability group. And I am going to talk a little bit about MEP embodied carbon. So go to my agenda. Why should we care about embodied carbon of MEP systems? And the second point, the Carbon Leadership Forum's MEP 2040 Challenge. So this is a graphic from the Carbon Leadership Forum study from 2019 about the estimates of MEP and TI embodied carbon. And kind of the conversation, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, in terms of embodied carbon is around the structure and enclosure of a building. LEED, Living Building Challenge, requires you to report only the structure and enclosure. But this shows that MEP and also the tenant improvement components also present a pretty significant impact in a building. And sort of the problem when we're only looking at in structure and enclosure is that we're missing a good portion of the embodied carbon in a building. So it's not the entire picture. I know maybe this study will be mentioned later on. Maybe there's some flaws here, but this kind of gives an idea of what we're kind of talking about and why we should care about it. So what are the key drivers when it comes to embodied carbon in MEP systems? So it's things along the lines of air handling units, heavy equipment, the sheet metal that goes into these systems, light fixtures, the piping, and especially refrigerants. So another, which I think is a really good graphic from that same study that I mentioned, there are some estimates on the difference between the embodied carbon of MEP systems for sort of standard performance buildings versus high performance buildings. And the thing that kind of stands out is that high performance MEP systems tend to have higher embodied carbon. I think maybe kind of the really high level reason for that is that you require more equipment. for a high performance system. So it's kind of one of the things we need to be thinking about. Maybe there's some trade-offs between operational and embodied carbon. We need to be looking at things like that closely. So kind of transitioning to talking about the CLF Carbon Leadership Forum's MEP 2040 Challenge. This was announced in, I believe, the beginning of 2021 and kind of was introduced publicly in October of last year. And maybe some of you are aware of it, but I think this is a really big step forward. So wanted to give kind of an overview of what's being done here. So kind of the really high level kind of look at summary of what this MEP 2040 challenge is, that design engineers for MEP systems need to be sort of advocating and pushing for net zero carbon and embodied carbon by 2040. And I will talk a little bit more about that. If you go on the website, which I have there, carbonleadershipforum.org/MEP 2040, it's kind of mentioned that the structural 2050 program was the kind of inspiration for this. And there's some really good videos on there as well that I would recommend checking out. So there's kind of 4 big things each firm that are signing up to the MEP 2040 challenge are being asked to do. First one is to establish a plan to reduce both operational and embodied carbon across MEP systems on all projects. Like I said, targeting 0 by 2040. The second one is request EPDs for MEP system components. I think that's one of the things we're seeing a lot, is that MEPs are very rare for these systems. So working with the manufacturers that we work with, pushing them to start producing those, that's something they can have a really big impact, and we want to start doing. The third would be requesting low GWP refrigerants when available, and designing systems that have those refrigerants. Kind of by default, that is not what's being done on projects, at least in my experience. So at least exploring that avenue is a good start, because I know we kind of see like R410A is the standard, and kind of moving away from that and looking at low GWP refrigerants is another good place to start. And then the last one, there are quarterly MEP 2040 forums that we're going to be participating in. I know there's actually one tomorrow. So that's kind of the benefit, the collaboration and working with the signatories of the challenge. There's also some interesting, key questions that kind of are being asked of everyone who's involved. So what are appropriate targets for embodied carbon reductions in MEP systems? How should this be sort of administered and reported? Like I said, EPDs are rare. So if we don't have EPDs, how do we sort of report this data to see what the impacts are and what is feasible in the marketplace in terms of MEP systems and embodied carbon? So as of today, this is the list of the signatories for the MEP 2040 challenge. So these are specifically MEP design firms. And I'm kind of talking about this because you'll see in middle, Glumac is a signatory of the MEP 2040 challenge. So like I said, we are an MEP design firm and do sustainability consulting. So we're kind of looking at this on both levels, that on our sustainability consulting projects, and also internally, even if we're not doing anything really sustainability consulting wise. And then there's some familiar names here as well. If you are from an MEP design firm and your organization is not a signatory, maybe you want to consider that. And then the last thing I have, these are the supporters of the challenge. So anyone who kind of wants to show their support, but isn't an MEP design firm. So architects, things along those lines, GCs. So that's another option as well. If your organization is interested, this is an option. So that's kind of the quick overview. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions, but thanks for listening.